Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Jess and today I thought I would talk to you guys about a trip that I recently went on, especially considering I have not been on a trip in a really long time. I am dog sitting, so if you hear little tippy tappies around, that's Bodie. He is just hanging out with us today. But I went on a trip probably about a couple weeks ago at this point, and I wrote down some notes and I wanted to kind of just go through it with you guys so that you could see the trip that I went on. I was actually really excited. I got to go to Florida and it was sort of like a weird reason why I got to go, but regardless, I probably wouldn't honestly have chosen it as my first destination on my upcoming trips to go on, but it was so much fun. And first I went to West Palm Beach and then we went over to Orlando after that. And I'll get into all of it, but first, before I get started, as always, if you guys are enjoying my videos, please consider subscribing and liking this video. And if you ever have any recommendations for Saturday videos or for true crime videos on Tuesdays, feel free to also leave that either in the comments below, or I also have a Google form that's always in the description and you can put any recommendations in there too. I always make sure to add them to my list and make sure I get to them all. Okay, so first off was my packing day. I honestly had a really chaotic packing day because I had recently bought a new iPhone 13 Pro Max and I ultimately decided to return it. Basically, the day that I would have returned from my trip would have been that 2-week period of when I was allowed to return the phone. It really just didn't make sense because I was gonna have to try to find another store if I didn't like it, and it was just a lot of chaos and a lot of money too because those phones are not cheap. So it was just a lot of going back and forth, making sure I got all my returns in before I was going on my trip because I was going to be gone for about 10 days and I just didn't want anything to go wrong while I was away. I also was feeling kind of like a little sad inside, I'm not gonna lie, because I was gonna be leaving P for so long and I haven't left him for that long in a really long time. And I wish I could take him everywhere, honestly. Like, he's just my baby. So that was my packing day. It was a bit stressful, like I said, but then the following day was travel day and I did take off the day from work because obviously I was not going to be able to work while I was traveling. I actually got lucky and I was able to get a direct flight from LAX to West Palm Beach. My flight was the tiniest bit delayed, but it was by like 20 minutes and I think there was like something wrong with the plane or something like that. But it actually worked out perfectly because I had been wanting to download a show on Netflix and it allowed me time to do that, but I did end up getting Wi-Fi on the plane, so it was fine. And then Ryan actually was already in West Palm Beach, so he already had a rental car and the hotel and everything. So he picked me up from the airport and then we went over to a place called Taco Chula and I think we had flautas that night and it was really, really good, honestly. Like, we were a little skeptical. The food kind of looked small, like the portions looked small when it came out, but we were super full by the end of it and it was honestly really good. And then we just went back to the hotel. We knew we wanted to have, that was a Friday, so we knew we wanted to have a full weekend ahead of us. So we tried to go to bed early, especially because I was going to experience some jet lag coming from California and being 3 hours ahead in Florida. So the next day we woke up at 6 a.m. I was initially going to work out in the morning, but my body it was 3 a.m. for me. So there was no way that I was going to work out at that point. I decided I was going to try to work out in the evening, but little did I know in the future, I was going to make myself sick from trying to have a full day. I fully thought that I wasn't going to be jet lagged because I was already so tired from the flight that I was like, oh, I'm going to be perfect because I'm already tired. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to wake up at 6 like I always do, and I'm going to totally bypass the jet lag. And that's really just not how it works. I needed a lot more rest and I shouldn't have pushed it so much on the first day. We should have swapped our days probably, but oh well, I learned. So we did wake up at 6 a.m. We went over to Starbucks and then we went over to the Everglades, and that was such an amazing experience. I have to say, pretty much everything in terms of West Palm Beach, at least, it felt like Jurassic Park. And that's literally how I've been describing it to everybody. It feels like there's so many like lush plants everywhere and it's just so beautiful that I felt like I was in the middle of some kind of like Amazon forest or something like that almost at all times. We went over to the Everglades, and at first Ryan was a little skeptical of the place that we chose, but it did have the most amount of reviews. So we were like, okay, let's just see what it is. And it was so cool. It was this cool boat that you went around and you got to see all of these different animals. You saw tons of birds, and we saw, I think, like 3 or 4 different gators. It was so beautiful. And they were like, I think they're called airboats, where the engine is on the top, like the propellers are in the air, not under the water. And we were able to go like really fast, but then the boat would also slow down and we would kind of like glide places. So cool, especially when the gators were just like coming at you a little bit. And then that specific area had a show, and it was from someone called the Gator Boys. And I guess they also have some kind of show on the Discovery Channel.
Sorry, Zeus. Yeah, maybe you should have put a ring on it.
It was just so cool because this guy had known the gators that he was playing with for so long that he was just like in the arena with them and just like laying down with them, playing with their jaws, like just totally doing whatever he felt like with them, and they would fully accept it. And then after that, we went over and we got to hold a baby gator, which was so cool. They had a lot of other animals around, like big tortoises and peacocks and other birds and things like that. And then there were also some albino gators that we got to see, but they were all behind cages, and then, or behind glass, I guess I should say. And then, yeah, we got to hold a baby gator, which was also so cool. I had no idea that that's what we were getting into. And so it was like, honestly, the coolest thing ever. And then after that, we had our whole experience with the Everglades. And since we were kind of close by, we decided to head over to Miami. It was really not our scene, but we figured since we were there, we might as well go check out the beach. It was just a lot of like big parties and like that kind of thing, and that's really just not the kind of people that Ryan and I are. So it was cool to see it, and I was glad that we got a chance to go there and see it, but I don't think that that would be my first place to go to if I was going back to Florida. So that next day was Sunday, and I woke up with a sore throat. At first, I was trying to convince myself that it was because we had the AC on all night, but the reality was that I had fully made myself sick because I pushed myself way too far the previous day, and I had a full day and basically woke up at 3 a.m. according to my body. So woke up, we went over to a cafe nearby. It was so good. I loved the food. They had fresh squeezed orange juice, which I felt like I had to get if I was in Florida. And then I just kind of had to lay low, honestly. I felt really bad because I knew that Ryan was excited to have another adventure day, but I just couldn't make it. So we went back to the hotel and I just kind of laid down. I fell asleep for a little while. And then after that, we went over to a place called Rosemary Square. It was really cute, but it was basically just a mall. And I had looked up like top things to do when you're in West Palm Beach, and there were only like 2 things that seemed interesting. And you'll see this across this video that basically everything was like a strip of something kind of cute, but then the rest of the neighborhood was not the best. So then we wouldn't really even explore it. But I mean, at least we felt like we got to see everything that we needed to see at the same time. So there wasn't anything, it was more about like the experience and like the ambiance of like just these beautiful bugs and trees and just all these plants around and animals around you versus like the things that we got to go do, if that makes sense. Because I was feeling so sick, we did get pho that day and it was so good. But then basically I just went back to the hotel and fell back asleep for a while. The next day was Monday. It was going to be my first work day in the East Coast time, which was such an experience in itself. I actually have a coworker who always works in the East Coast time. She's in New York, but works out of PST hours, if that makes sense. I didn't really love it, honestly. Like, it was nice to have a whole morning to yourself and then get to work, but I don't know. I just ending at 8 p.m. was not great. So I went to Starbucks in the morning with Ryan, and then he dropped me back off at the hotel. He went to work and I just worked. And then after that, we went swimming, and that was a lot of fun. I still wasn't feeling the best, but I felt like getting, my body moving and getting some exercise in really helped in making me feel a little bit better. And then we got Chinese food after that. There was a Chinese place nearby the hotel that I had been eyeing for a little bit, and it was pretty good, but they messed up our order a little bit, and the portions were huge. So we had so many leftovers, like our tiny little mini fridge was full of leftovers. The next day, again, I just worked. We went to Panera that morning instead of Starbucks. Ryan just wanted to try something different. He'd never really had their breakfast before. And then Again, I actually worked EST hours that day so that I could get off at 5-ish. And we went over to a place called Macarthur Park, and it was so beautiful. Ryan had stumbled across this park a couple of days before I had gotten to West Palm Beach, and the pictures were just so beautiful. And I was like, we have to absolutely go. It was this really beautiful, like you drive in and there's just, first of all, the parking lot was already beautiful, which is so funny to say. But then there's this like beautiful trail with all these plants everywhere. And then this little tiny bridge comes out of that and it takes you all along this water. And from there's a beach, and it was just so pretty. Like everything about it was beautiful. And I wish that we could have stayed there for so much longer, honestly, because that's like all I wanted to do basically was stay at that area. It was so pretty, but it did close at 7. So we only had like an hour and a half by the time we had gotten there. After we had that amazing, wonderful experience, we went over and Ryan got some Five Guys, and I just wasn't hungry at that point because I had all of those leftovers from the previous night. And then we went over to Barnes & Noble and I picked out a couple of books, which I can't remember if I've spoken about, but I picked out Beach Read and The Silent Patient. Both of them were amazing. Both of them were very different books. And I was just excited because I had brought my Kindle with me and the books that I had downloaded from the library were just not like the best. And so I was feeling like about reading. So I was feeling very excited at this point that I was getting back into reading again and that I wanted to pick up my book more often. So Wednesday was actually a really funny day. After the basically week that Ryan was in the hotel and couple of days that I was there, we wanted to get housekeeping, and apparently you had to request housekeeping because of COVID. Like they weren't coming in every single day like they normally would. So I asked the front office the night before, hey, can you guys come in? They said, yeah. So I left. Ryan went to Starbucks and I went with him, but then I brought all my stuff and I actually went to go walk, and I was going to try to go walk to like a mall or something like that, but it was just too far. And then by the time I was like getting toward the mall, there was actually like a road closure. So I couldn't even walk all the way there. So I walked back. I walked probably like 1.5 to 2 miles, and I decided to just hang out at the Starbucks again because I knew that the housekeeping needed time. They had given us a time frame of 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. we'll be there, and it was just kind of like, okay, that's like my whole day. So I hung out at the Starbucks for a while, and then around my lunchtime, I was like, I'm just gonna go check in and see. And the room still wasn't done, and I was like, okay, so I asked one of the housekeeping ladies. She said I wasn't on the list, and I was super confused. And then I went down and they were like, oh no, yeah, you're not on the list. So they re-added us. So I had spent my whole day at Starbucks for like pretty much no reason, but that's fine. I mean, like I had a different kind of day at the very least. So that was my work day. And then after that, Ryan came home. We got some Chipotle for dinner. We went over to Chipotle and just ate there. And then we went back home, I say home, but I mean hotel. And we hung out and watched one of those like cooking shows, like where they're racing around the grocery store and that kind of thing. We were really into it that night. I'm not sure why. I think we were just like kind of tired and wanting to just watch something stupid. And we hadn't used the TV up until this point. So we were kind of like, we should just like try it out since we literally don't have cable at our own homes. And it was a very fun experience. And honestly, just like getting to lay down and do nothing was kind of what we needed. So the next day, I think was Thursday at this point, and I decided to first go to Starbucks with Ryan. This became kind of like our routine. And after I got back, I actually went up to the front desk and I was like, are you guys coming to the room today? And they said they would. So I worked in the lobby for a little bit just so that I didn't have to like hang out at Starbucks again, and then went up and they had finally gone. We just felt like we kind of needed it because we had been in the room for so long and I was working from the room. So it's not like we were like leaving it by itself for a while, if that makes sense. Basically, I just worked that day, and then Ryan was really not feeling so great. I think whatever I had, like my cold that I had, I passed on to him, unfortunately. So we kind of just laid low, but then we decided that we wanted to just take a little drive around. And there were a couple of places, like I mentioned, one of them was called Antique Row that I wanted to check out, but it was just like a bunch of antique stores that were like next to each other, and it wasn't something that you could really walk around. Like that was sort of a common theme, was that a lot of the spaces you couldn't just like go take a walk. kind of like in LA, how you can just walk around Pasadena or something like that. You can't really do that in West Palm Beach. So instead we just kept driving, and that's when we found this hill in a park. And for whatever reason, Ryan was like super attracted to this hill. He was like, I want to just like roll down that hill. So we went to the park, and it was so cool. The trees were amazing. They had these like beautiful vines that were hanging down, and you could actually swing on them. So we definitely did that. At first, Ryan was nervous to swing on them, but then once I did it, he was like, okay, I'm gonna try it too. And it was so fun. Like, we just don't have trees like that in California, or when I lived in Washington either. It was just such a different environment. And then we also continued to walk around, and we saw these insane spiders. We had seen them at the Macarthur Park also, but we got to see them close up, and they were huge. It was like probably this big for a spider, and we were just so amazed. There were like dozens in a tree. And it was just like huge. So I FaceTimed my mom and showed her too, because she loves that kind of stuff. And again, I think mostly it was just we saw so many like different things that we're just not used to in California. From there, we were pretty hungry. So we went over to a nearby mall, and they had a Shake Shack there. So we just ate that. And the mall closed at 8 p.m., which I was very surprised by. I feel like the malls in California close around like 10-ish. So it was just a very sleepy town is how Ryan kept describing it. Like, it very much felt like the place that you'd go and retire, or like have a very quiet vacation, and everything just closed very early. So we got some Shake Shack, we went home, and we decided to book a hotel for Orlando so that we can make sure that we had a place to stay there. Then on Friday, I had a half day, so I was supposed to get off at 12:30 Pacific time, which is about like 3:30 Eastern time for getting off work for me. So I was trying to work mostly in Eastern time so I can get off at a decent time and have fun with Ryan, but it just didn't make sense. Like, by the time I was going to be getting off work, everyone else was going to be starting, and I just couldn't swing that. So I had a morning to myself at the hotel. It was actually really lovely. I just like read my book, and it actually rained that day, which I was like hoping for rain the whole time. I really wanted to experience that like kind of humid rain, and it was so different. It was so warm, and it smelled sweet. Like, it almost smelled like lotion or candy, like cotton candy. And I just like kept freaking out. Ryan didn't really get it. He was just like, what are you talking about? And I was like, it smells like candy, like it's raining. And I was like dancing around, and I was so excited. But then about 3:30ish, I closed out on work, and we left the hotel, and we started on our trek to Orlando, which took about 3 hours. And we stopped on the way at a Walmart, which was very interesting. I feel like going around the US, you should stop at like Walmarts in different states. I feel like you get a better picture of like the people in that state. And it was just very interesting. Because I had gotten sick, I had been using my mask, and I wanted to make sure that I had a clean mask for when I was going on the plane in a couple of days. And they basically were just like, no, we don't have masks here. It was just like a very different experience. Like, I never felt unsafe because I'm vaccinated, but at the same time, I was just like, they don't sell masks here. Like, we went to CVS, a Rite Aid, and a Walmart. None of them had masks. So it was a very interesting experience. But then we got to the Orlando resort. We got there probably around 9-ish, I think. And it was just so late. We didn't really want to do anything. So we just went to sleep and basically got ready for the next day. The next day, we woke up about 7:30, and I felt really bad because Ryan was not feeling well, and I was like feeling fine at this point, and I was pumped because we were going to be going to Universal Studios, and I was like, can we please wake up early and get there as soon as they open? And he was like, do we have to? And it turns out that, first of all, they closed at 5 because of the like horror nights or whatever that they were doing for Halloween. And then on top of it, it just wasn't the best experience. We had just recently gone to Disneyland, and it was like right after Disney opened. It was at 30% capacity. So we had like the best experience at Disneyland. And we were thinking about going to Disney World, but we decided against it because the like Magic Kingdom is pretty much the same as what you would experience in California. So we were like, let's try something different. Let's go to Universal. And I had been wanting to go to the Harry Potter world. We decided to go, apparently there's 2 parks for Universal. One has Diagon Alley, one has Hogsmeade. And we decided to go to Diagon Alley because the Universal in Los Angeles also has Hogsmeade. So we were like, let's try something different. It was a mess. there were just so many people, and there were like little things that you couldn't even get water at, like they had those like Coke stations where you can pick and choose whatever drink you want. In terms of like the rides themselves, we went on one ride and then we got extremely sick, and the park was just really small. It just wasn't the same experience as Disneyland, I'm not gonna lie. But Diagon Alley was so cool. The dragon was cool. We got to go around to the different shops and things like that. But I definitely felt like Disneyland was more of a place where I could like ride rides and like felt more magical, and Universal felt like you were just like walking behind the scenes of different movies, which is kind of what it's meant to be, but it just didn't feel as like movie magic. It felt like it was fine. I don't know. So we did want to go onto the Harry Potter ride, but unfortunately the line was like 2.5 hours because everybody was upgrading their tickets to get a fast pass. So it really wasn't worth it, especially because by the time we would be getting into the ride, the park would be closing. So we were just like, you know what? Sunken cost. We already paid for the tickets. Let's just go home and enjoy the resort for a little bit. And basically that's what we did. Initially, I wanted to walk around the resort because we booked a resort essentially, and it was this beautiful resort. It was like the room itself was like basically a 1-bedroom apartment, but like very large. And I was very, very surprised because it was a pretty cheap stay. It was like $80 a night or something like that. And I really wanted to walk around, but by the time we got back to the hotel or the resort, we were exhausted. I passed out for a little while, and then I read while Ryan passed out, and we were just like, we can't do this. So I decided that the next day, even though we were going to be leaving that day, I was going to make a point to just at least walk around and see what the resort even had to offer, because we obviously weren't going to be using any of it, but I just kind of wanted to see what was there. And then our last day, I woke up at 6 a.m. and I made some coffee and read for a little bit while Ryan slept in. And then by the time he woke up, I decided that I had already gotten ready, so I wanted to go check out the resort like I mentioned. So I went around, walked around, took some pictures, and then came back, and Ryan and I got our stuff together, and then we headed out from there. We went to Dunkin Donuts just because I've never been to Dunkin Donuts. Like, I think I've been one time, but I didn't order anything. I just went with a friend. So I wanted to try it out, and I knew it was like a very big East Coast thing, and it was pretty good. I liked it. Then after that, we just went to the airport and waited around for a little bit and then hopped on the plane. Unfortunately, we didn't get to sit next to each other because we had very different tickets, and I bought like the cheapest tickets I could find. I think it was like a $60 flight, but I couldn't choose my seats until the day of. And then even still, unless you wanted a seat in the very front, or if you wanted a seat in the front, you had to pay like an extra $80. But if you wanted a seat in the back, it was free. So I just chose a seat in the back, and Ryan got one in the front. And so we just like texted while we were on the flight and like told each other what movies we were watching and things like that. But it was still nice to know that he was on the flight, and like, I don't know, I could still talk to him, and we were on the same time zone at least. Then we got back to LA and basically just Ubered over to Ryan's house. He dropped me off at my house, and we kind of ended the night there. And again, it was a really fun trip. I think it was so cool for Ryan and I to experience. First of all, this was the first time we had ever gone out of the state with each other. And then also we hadn't really ever gone on a trip for that long together, and it was cool because we were both working, so it wasn't like constant one-on-one time. But it was so much fun to get to like experience these new things with Ryan and not have to try to tell him. Like, I could tell him about how excited I was about the rain or different things like that, like seeing those spiders or seeing the trees and just all of these things. I was grateful that I got to experience it with him, and that I even got to experience it at all. Like I said, this probably wouldn't have been my first place on my list of places I want to go next, but it was really beautiful, and it was not at all the type of place that I feel like people talk about Florida being. I feel like a lot of people have really bad things to say about Florida, honestly, from what I hear on social media and things like that, but everyone was really kind to us, and it was a really beautiful place. So that was my latest trip to Florida. I hope you guys enjoyed that story and any like videos that I added in here. Again, if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you've been liking my videos, please consider subscribing. And again, if you have any recommendations, I would always love to hear them. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye guys.